On the polished marble stage of the Marshall Square, the Dark Angels finally finished their display. Polished bolters clamped to their chests, they formed a V-shaped fan of squads leading back to the ramp of the lead Stormbird. The Lion emerged. Despite himself, Gilliman felt his heart skip and his lungs pump. The Lion. The Lion. There were brothers that he could look down on and was happy to, and there were brothers that he could admire. Rogol, Magnus, and Sanguinius, and, damn him, even Russ. He could admire them for what they were, but there were only two brothers that he had ever actually looked up to. Only two brothers that he had actually ever admired. There were only two brothers that he felt shadowed by when they were present. Lionel Johnson and Horace Lupercal. The Lion emerged from his lander stony-faced, bareheaded, his long golden hair trailing in the wind. So beautiful, so deadly, so empty, so unreadable. Hi there. Glad you could join me this rainy evening. Pull up a chair, grab a blanket, warm up by the fire, and I'll tell you a story. A story of a man, if you can call his kind men. A man who went from a brave little boy in a dark forest full of monsters to perhaps the last hope for half a galaxy-spanning empire. This will be the first in a new series of videos where we'll be going on a journey into the minds of all 19 Primarchs in 18 videos. We'll be exploring their motivations, their ambitions, their rise and their fall, and for some, even their future. If you like this series and want to see more of it, or just my regular What If styled videos, I'd appreciate all the regular YouTube pleasantries. This video was delayed quite a bit due to me traveling to visit family during Easter break, and then a grand tournament the week after. If you want to see a breakdown of my experience at my first ever proper 40k tournament, be sure to let me know down in the comments. Without further ado, let's get down to business, and we'll start with a brief recap of the Lion's formative years, for those in the back who haven't read his Primarch book. We each are only guests in the lives of others. After landing on the forest world of Caliban, Lionel Johnson, often referred to as only the Lion, should by any reckoning have died within minutes, or at best within hours. Caliban was a death world, infested by what was later discovered to be chaos-infused, beastly creatures. The Lion hit the ground far away from any human habitation, and being a defenseless little baby, he should have been immediately mauled to death. But somehow he didn't. For years, he fended for himself, keeping the monsters at bay with nothing but his hands and probably some improvised weapons. Before his 10th year was over, he was discovered by a group from one of the Calibanite Night Orders that spotted the surface of the world. Thinking Johnson to be just another beast, they were about to shoot him to death. But they were halted as one knight, named Luther, realized this creature was a man, larger than them and barely intelligent, but a man nonetheless. After some back and forth, Luther convinced the blood-covered man-thing to come along with him. Upon coming back to their fortress monastery, Luther named the boy Lionel Johnson, which in the language of Caliban means the lion, son of the forest, after the most deadly of creatures on that world, the Calibanite lion. In the coming years, the Lion would be a son of sorts to Luther, growing up at an astonishing speed and becoming an important part of the Order of Knights they belonged to. Eventually, the Lion petitioned the Grand Masters of his own order and all the others to launch a crusade against the beasts infesting the world. The Lion himself led this crusade, and between his excellent strategic mind and the zealous fury of the Knights, after not even a decade of war, all the beasts of the world had been slain. As a reward for achieving what the knights alone could not, the Grand Masters of the Orders bestowed on the Lion the honor of becoming the Supreme Grand Master of the Knights of Caliban, effectively making him the sole ruler of the Green World. Upon hearing of this, a resentment grew in Luther. Not much at first, but with time he grew to hate his adoptive son, thinking him a tyrant who should have been cut down that fateful day deep in the forests. This hatred grew even deeper as the Great Crusade reached Caliban, as the Lion bowed before his father, the Emperor of Mankind. The Lion was given command of the first Legiones Astartes, and many of the younger Knights of Caliban became the first Space Marines hailing from that world. The older Knights were offered gene amplification, not making them into true Space Marines, but close enough to make the distinction mostly irrelevant, with the exception of size, meaning the Grand Masters of the Orders were now physically overshadowed by these upstarts in their fancy, shiny power armor. Even after this, many of the older Knights disliked the changes, both to their planets, themselves, and their Knights. Some even went as far as to try to assassinate the Emperor and the Lion, but they were foiled by the Psyker Zahariel of the Order, who stood loyally behind his Primarch. After this, from the Lion's perspective, all was right in the world. His home was free of monsters, he had received a legion, a navy, and all the tools he needed to destroy his enemies, and the Great Crusade beckoned. His fury now unleashed, the newly renamed Dark Angels Legion at his side, he made his way to wage war on the stars. I won't cover his exploits during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy any longer than is needed to explore his mind, so instead I recommend that you start reading the Horus Heresy novels instead, if you haven't already. They're great books and can also be enjoyed in ebook and audiobook format if you're not the type of person to enjoy reading physical books. I will add, however, that upon coming home after the conclusion of the Horus Heresy, the Lion found half his own legion in open revolt against him. Luther had unified all the centers on Caliban and tricked many others of the legion into believing that the Lion was on his way to destroy them. A fight ensued, which resulted in Caliban breaking apart, Luther being captured and imprisoned, and the Lion disappearing into a chamber deep within the largest surviving fragment of Caliban, which was renamed The Rock and contained the Dark Angels Fortress Monastery. They later equipped it with engines, and it now serves as their flagship and home even 10,000 years later. The measure of true glory is not to give battle in the bright noon of war, surrounded by brave comrades upon the field of victory, but to valiantly fight on alone in the darkness, with no hope of aid or even remembrance, and to spit defiance in midnight's eye. At a glance, the Lion will, to most, look like a relatively boring Primarch, at least where his powers are concerned. He doesn't have Sanguinius's wings, Vulcan's immortality, Curse's foresight, or Corvus Corax's ability to be functionally invisible. Being an excellent strategist and an even greater swordfighter are both traits found in most Primarchs, and for most of his life that was all the Lion ever had. That and an ego to rival Perturabo. But something happened when he was asleep for all those millennia on the rock. When he woke up, he found himself able to cross into another realm, one that looked a lot like the forests of the now destroyed Caliban, but somehow also not Caliban. Upon coming out of that realm again, he was elsewhere, on an entirely different planet than the one he was on before entering the Mirror Caliban. Initially, he couldn't control this ability at will, it just kind of happened on its own. While in the Mirrorverse, he found a demonic creature that took on the faces of his brothers. He found Watchers in the Dark, and his new weapons, the Sword Fealty and the Emperor's Shield. Eventually, he learned to use his gift at will, and in the current setting of the Era Indomitus, the lion uses this power, now referred to as forest walking, to quickly move from world to world, defending Imperium Nihilus as best he can. There are great many theories on what forest walking really is, and why the lion only learned to do it after napping for 10,000 years, but so far there is no clear answer. The realm he walks through doesn't appear to be the warp or the Eldari webway, but a secret third thing, and it's clearly deeply connected to the spirit of the Broken World Caliban. I'd like to speculate a bit and offer you some hot takes on what the Mirror Caliban and forest walking actually are, but I gotta be honest, I haven't got a clue. Games Workshop could go in any of 1,000 different ways with this, and I haven't the foggiest idea on which. It will regardless continue being a great tool in the fight to free Imperium Nihilus from the Despoiler's grasp in the years to come. That and the lion's first Primarch abilities, of course. The aforementioned strategic brilliance and mastery of the blade. Excellent, Johnson said. In that case, you're welcome to take possession of the Ordinatus siege guns at your convenience. On one condition, of course. The Primarch raised a thin eyebrow. Oh. Johnson gave his guest a sly grin. You must promise me that they'll be put to good use on Istvan. Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, smiled, his eyes gleaming like polished iron. Oh yes, he said. Of that you may be assured. Prior to his long nap, Lionel Johnson was, as Gilliman commented, one of the most impressive Primarchs around, probably overshadowed only by Horus Lupercal himself. Like most of his brothers, the Lion has always been the best at everything, of everyone around him, but unlike his brothers, that continued for the most part after he was introduced to the other Primarchs. This made the young Lion pup a foolhardy man, and exceedingly arrogant. He even came to blows with Leman Russ when the two fought against an independent human empire during the Great Crusade. They disagreed on how to proceed with the attack on an enemy headquarters, which resulted in a fight in the ruins of that same headquarters. They were evenly matched, but after a full day of fighting, Russ burst out laughing at the absurdity of the situation. The Lion did not share his brother's amusement, but rather took the chance to sucker punch Russ so hard the Primarch of the Space Wolves passed out on the spot. I think this demonstrates an old saying about the two very well. It's said that Leman Russ is a knight playing the role of a barbarian, while the Lion is a barbarian playing the role of a knight. This fits pretty well. The Lion was fond of big speeches of honor and duty, and yet when the moment came, he acted and did something decisively dishonorable. This is, of course, just one example, but you get my point. I'm by no means an actual psychotherapist, but my unprofessional diagnosis of the Lion would simply be single child syndrome, despite having well over a dozen brothers. A man not used to being told no, and all that baggage that comes with that. I find him quite fascinating, really, because while he was foolhardy and quick to anger, he was simultaneously cautious and careful, especially after the events of the unremembered Empire arc of the Horus Heresy. The cautiousness is exemplified well in the following quote. There is a very simple reason why Lionel Johnson did not take part in the final battles of the Horus Heresy. It is beautifully simple when you consider it. He was waiting. Waiting for what? Boreas asked quietly. He was waiting to see which side won, of course. While staunchly loyal to the Emperor, the Dark Angels never really fought much against many of the traitors, with the exception of Conrad Curse's Night Lords. I believe that this was by design, to ensure that even if the Loyalists lost, the Lion could still rely on plausible deniability, and eke out a space for himself in Horus's new world order. This is pure speculation, however, and could just as likely not be the case. In the 10,000 years that have passed since Lionel Johnson went to bed, he's gone through a major personality shift. Upon his return, we got the unique privilege of actually being put inside his head in the novel about that very return. In it, we see him as a more grounded, level-headed guy, appearing more as a wise, aged veteran than as the hot-headed warrior he once was. And he appears like that because that's exactly the man he is now. In the current era, the Lion is a more forgiving man, even going as far as to bring back the non-chaos corrupted Fallen back into the fold, presumably to the great frustration of the Dark Angels chapter. The Lion strikes me now as kinder than he was before, and I have great hopes for his continued personal growth in the years to come. The Lion had long held that the caliber of man was in reverse proportion to their need to make their worth known. It was a belief that had yet to be proven false. As Johnson only came back to the setting at the very end of 9th edition just a couple of years ago, he hasn't been back long, so what actually will happen to him going forward is very much still up in the air. But I'd like to speculate a bit on how this story is going to evolve going forward. Currently, he has taken on the role of the Defender of Imperium Nihilis. That's of course the half of the Imperium on the shadowy side of the Cicatrix Maledictum, where the light of the Astronomicon doesn't shine. This will likely continue, as the narrative now is converging on the Nockmund Gauntlet. Both sides of it are struggling, and we know Robuta Gilliman is moving towards the southern side. So why not have the two meet there, as the Imperium doubtlessly wins the conflict again, ensuring the only safe passage between the two halves remain open. Eventually, Lehman Russ is also likely to reappear, which will throw around the dynamic quite a bit. They have some unfinished business to discuss, so I think Russ and the Lion will tag team the Imperium Nihilus together, spearheading a massive crusade to crush the Black Legion strongholds dotting the area. Games Workshop's probably developed his larger character traits to the point they want to, so I don't see him changing much personality-wise, ever, really. Unless he dies, of course. There's always a possibility of that. Personally, I don't think the Lion is the best Primarch for this format. As well interesting, he's not all that deep, at least outside the aspects we've gone through here today. But I wanted to go through them all in order, so that's just how it is. Next up is Fulgrim, but there'll probably be one or two or more other long-form videos before I get around to that. As I said, this video was greatly delayed, but we should be back to our regular scheduled programming now. I'm just finishing up the last of my university exams in the next couple of weeks, and writing scripts is funnily enough a good way to unwind from them. So expect the next long-form video within the next couple of weeks probably. Anyway, I won't hold you back any longer. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and that if you did, I'd really appreciate the regular YouTube pleasantries. Until the next time, goodbye.